Hello, I'm Craig Webb, president of Webb Analytics, and this is my economic update for April. This is produced with support from ECI. I want to thank them for making this possible. They also will make the slides available to you later on. We're going to go through a lot of different things today, so I don't have much time. I'm just going to race right into it. The first one deals with the Construction Supply 150 report, which I'm planning to put out early in May. I've been doing these for 18 years now. And interestingly enough, when most people in the past were reporting setbacks, they didn't want to report at all. This year, something like 2/3 of the people on the report are going to report lower revenues in 2023 than they did in 2022. The reason why is lumber. If you take a look, for example, at three of the biggest companies out there, Home Depot, Lowe's, Builders FirstSource, they made something like 8.5 to 9 billion fewer dollars in 2023 off of lumber than they did in 2022. And as a result, lumber alone contributed to something like 25 to 70% of the entire decline in revenue for these companies in 2023. Clearly, this was a big impact in a lot of places, and you're going to be seeing that in the report. The big news everybody's talking about these days is also about Home Depot, in that they are spending $18.25 billion to purchase SRS Distribution. SRS, as you probably know, was born about 2008, and it has grown spectacularly over the last years. It's up to $9 billion of revenue, 760 branches around the country. 2/3 of those are in the roofing and exterior space. About $1.5 billion is in their landscaping division. A little less than $1.5 billion is in their pools division. Now, some people have been asking me, why would the Home Depot want to spend this money? Well, on Home Depot's own presentation, these were the reasons they gave. I think that this is what people call an accretive deal, an add-on deal. It just makes Home Depot bigger. It's not necessarily one that's designed for synergy, although there are some examples of some good things that SRS does, for example, in trade credit and in managing technology change that the Home Depot really admired. So I think that there will be a few pieces of synergy, but for the most part, the Home Depot will be pretty much what it was. Among the analysts that people were saying, you're going to see some interesting commentary. One is that this may have been as much of a deal involving Amazon as it was Lowe's. This also gets into some of the questions about how deep the Home Depot wants to get into what they call the complex pro. I don't think they're still very deep at all, but this may get them a little bit closer. Now let's turn to the economy in general. I love the Atlanta Fed's GDP now because it gives you an idea of how things are progressing over the course of the quarter that we're in now. And it looks like we're on our way to about 2.5%, which is slower growth than we saw in the fourth quarter of last year, but still not a recession. And we seem to be rolling along. In fact, companies are hiring more than had been expected when you have interest rates as high as they are. That hiring has kept going. I just showed you the numbers for March. That you can get the state numbers for February right now, and only one state went backwards in terms of growth in employment in that month. Interestingly, it's the immigrants who are providing a lot of our employment growth. And this is something that we haven't seen for a while, but it really is coming on. And according to the Brookings Institution, they are helping the economy grow. Right now, if you take 2024, the idea is that it might increase by 1/10 of a percentage point. Now, given that we're only going to grow maybe 2%, that's not bad at all, and that really does help. Consumers' mood seems to be getting a little bit better, according to the University of Michigan survey about where people think we're heading. And if you look at the New York Federal Reserve, which does a similar survey on people's economic conditions, asking them what things are going to be like a year from now, if you go back to the box on the red box on the left-hand side, Around June of 2022, something on the order of 45% of the people who were responding said they felt that in a year they were going to be somewhat or much worse off. You go about a year later, I'm sorry, 2 years later, and that's the box on the right-hand side. And you can see that the numbers are dramatically lower. People are feeling better about where they're going. And it seems to have taken place right around May or June of 2022, where the change took place. The inflation, which is the blue line, was relatively high. The red line is consumer sentiment was low. It took until May of last year for those to switch. Now people's sentiment is higher and inflation is lower. What's powering that in part is wage growth, and we're basically paying people higher increases in wages than we were in 2019. That's the general economy. So now let's focus on customers that you folks are dealing with. A couple of surveys I've seen recently by Stiefel, excuse me. One is on composite decking. They do see some sales growth over the next 12 months that should be pretty good. They also surveyed roofers, and they were expecting growth in the mid-single digits in the number of jobs they were getting, and about a 5.5% increase in what they were going to be charging for that. Numbers from the KBMI, the Kitchen and Bath Market Outlook, shows growth for all these peoples, at least through the fourth quarter and going into this year. The architects are not quite as happy as everybody else. A number above 50 on their index indicates things are growing. A number below 50 indicates things aren't quite growing as well. So the glass is not quite half full there. On the construction side, we've been having an increase in starts as well as permits. The housing units under construction has held relatively steady for the last several months. And it seems that that's in part because we're not having quite the holdups in the supply chain that back in 2022 were causing jobs to take a lot longer than they normally did. Builders are still giving out incentives to get people over the mortgage hurdle. And that's been good for the public builders because they can give those incentives. That's been a challenge for the private builders and the custom builders because they don't have that kind of financial wherewithal to buy down a mortgage rate. In essence, everyone is waiting for the Fed to show up and bring lots of treats in the form of lower interest rates. The question is, when's that going to happen? There had been beliefs that it would be maybe early in the second half of 2022, but there's been some stories lately that suggest that, well, if the economy is as strong as it is and people keep hiring and wages keep going up and interest rates stay maybe at 3%, not 2%, maybe interest rates won't be cut like we thought, and it'll take a while longer, maybe until the fall. And so we got some interesting things to see going forward. That's going to be a challenge for home builders because something like 88% of mortgages are under 5%. And the general belief is that we got to get below 5% or at least in order to really see people start selling existing homes and demand happening. Unfortunately, we're not seeing that kind of slowdown take place in the economy. And that's a problem because the consumer price index is very heavily dependent on what home prices and rents are like. Well, rents are still going up, even though we supposedly have had a lot more apartments come online this year as a result of multifamily construction last year. But that doesn't seem to be happening. I would point out that there are big differences in various parts of the country over those rent changes. The places where the rents seem to be going up often are places where I don't think there's been as much multifamily construction recently as the places where rents are going down. So maybe the multifamily is having an impact, but its impact is limited depending on where you are in the country. Otherwise, prices are continuing to rise for many non-lumber products, and that's going to continue for a while. There is talk that the home centers are trying to beat down the prices that suppliers are charging them. because they think that they collected too much during the inflation. Is that true? I don't know. I think you'll just have to go to Home Depot and Lowe's to see whether there's any difference in what's being charged there. One thing that you can expect to have happen this year is a repeat of the large number of billion-dollar weather problems that we had in 2023. We've already had 2 confirmed cases this year of places with losses over $1 billion. The hurricane forecast is very severe this year. So that's going to be a problem when it comes to things like insurance. And I believe that home insurance rates could be one of the continuing big stories that we're going to see in housing and construction supply going forward. A company called Insurify believes home insurance rates will rise 6% this year, but actually it'll be higher in certain parts of the country, like Florida, 7%, Louisiana, God help them, 23%, and then other places where it might not rise as much. But in general, we're going to have some challenges there, and I think that's going to affect the price of a home, and especially coastal places and the way they want to buy. I showed you this slide before, but I want to look at it slightly differently. I said earlier that people were getting more optimistic because the percentage of people who felt much worse off or somewhat worse off was going down. Then again, if you look on the right-hand side and through, March of this year, we still have something like 23% of the people in the group who do believe that things are going to get worse. And that points to another factor in the remodeling future and the home builders future, which is that we've got a very different set of customers depending on their relative income levels. Zonda believes that the top 20% of the income are really going to drive a lot of the remodeling growth that we're going to be seeing in the coming year. The middle income people and upper income people, they're going to have a little bit, and then the low end, the lowest people are going to be hurting, and they're going to continue to be hurting, and they will factor in only in terms of really absolute necessity projects, such as a new roof, or a stove that goes out, that sort of thing. I want to finish with on a slightly down note, but I think it really factors into what you should be thinking about with regard to how you deal with your staff. And that comes from Gallup, which does a report on happiness around the world. They survey 143 different countries, and they do it every year, and they take the average for the last 3 years. And as you might expect, the Northern European countries are doing well and other countries not so well. 2 things here. Northern European country, Finland, number 1. Afghanistan, no surprise, number 143. But look at the United States rank. We're down to 23rd, and we used to be in the upper 20s all the time. I think what's even more concerning is that if you break things down depending on the age of the person who is responding, the relative rank of the United States and Canada goes down the younger you are. In the rest of the world, the older you get, the less happy you are. In North America and in Australia and New Zealand, the older you get, the happier you are, which indicates to me that there's some real stress and distress going on among our younger workers, our younger people. And I think if you're an HR person or you care about your staff, you should be looking at this. I tend to believe that in general, you should remain positively nervous about the state of the economy and where things are going. I believe that for dealers, the glass is more than half full, and that you should be going forward expecting better times ahead, but also being aware that there is that possibility that the trouble could happen. But it's more likely that better things are going to happen than badder things. I think there's so much out there to inspire us, despite what, the Gallup report I'm reporting and things like that. If you're like me and you enjoyed watching Caitlin Clark and women's basketball tournament, a phenomenal tournament and a phenomenal growth of a sport that I think deserves the love. At the same time, we all came together to see the eclipse and marveling over what Mother Nature can do out there. I think there is so much out there to inspire us. I hope the information I gave you may not be inspirational, but at least informational, and that it gave you an idea of things to do and how to proceed in the future. I thank you for taking part in this. This report was made once again possible with support from ECI. They also will make the slides available. Thank you so much for spending time with me today. Bye-bye.